Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Reactor, and this is Quinn, and today's article comes from Vox.com and says Colorado passes Amendment A, voting to officially abolish prison slavery. 2 years after a similar amendment failed, voters approved a measure that will remove state language allowing forced prison labor without pay. Real quick, I want to say, because this is Vox, I'm willing to bet that, I'm not saying it's not true. This whole article is probably very true, but they probably use a lot of, words to try to manipulate the reader, like abolish prison slavery.
Right.
I'm not sure. I'm willing to bet that it wasn't prison slavery and they got paid $1 an hour. I could be wrong, but
right.
I know Vox likes to twist things into in an extreme way.
I know that every state is different with how their state prisons pay prisoners for labor, and this makes it sound like they're not paying any sort of money to anybody.
And I kind of find that hard to believe.
In Colorado.
I do agree that prison, labor should be paid minimum wage at least, but I just kind of don't think that there is zero pay.
I think people should make the same amount of money that they would make on the outside, in the free world, and then
it's like being grounded.
What's the fear that you'll end up walking away from 5 years of jail with $50,000 or $60,000. Oh no, this person's going to get out of jail and start a criminal enterprise. Well, probably not.
It's
they're probably going to buy a house or something.
Allowing felons to vote, they might vote to legalize crime.
Right.
You can't risk that.
Is it because they don't want criminals to rehabilitating criminals to have money? What is it?
Or how you can't get a job after you go to prison? Well, shit, your life's over.
Right.
What am I supposed to do? I'm going to go back to crime because I can't make a living.
Let the person earn enough so that they have a little buffer so that they can find it,
If you don't allow them to get jobs, you make it difficult for them to get jobs, where do you think the criminals are going to go? They're going to get
probably back to crime.
If it's the only thing they're worse off than they were before they got in trouble. Anyway, let's start the article. More than 150 years after the ratification of the U.S. Constitution's 13th Amendment, Colorado has officially abolished slavery. Coloradans voted Tuesday for Amendment A, a measure removing language in the state constitution that allowed prison labor without pay. Okay, so I guess without pay. That's insane. Colorado, too. I would have never suspected they would be,
You're right.
I think highly of Colorado. Colorado is one of more than a dozen states whose state constitution technically still allows involuntary servitude as a form of criminal punishment. Technically, now we're seeing what's really happening. The state's language closely resembles a contested passage that remains in the U.S. Constitution's 13th Amendment, which outlawed chattel slavery, but allowed those convicted of crimes to be forced into labor. Isn't that the amendment? Wasn't Kanye talking about something like that? Get rid of prison labor? And everyone freaked out. This is what the language looks like in the 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. This is the federal law. And this is what the language looked like in Colorado's state constitution before voters backed Amendment A. Again, emphasis added. There shall never be in this state either slavery or involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted. So it's just reworded. The previous language was strongly opposed by local activists like Jamoke Emery, a lead organizer with Abolish Slavery Colorado, one of the groups that has worked alongside the state ACLU and NAACP to build support for the new amendment. I hope that this puts forth the message that our past doesn't have to be our future, that by and large, we as Americans are interested in fixing our mistakes, Emery told CNN last month when discussing the amendment. Amendment A was sponsored in the Colorado State Legislature by 3 Democrats, Rep. Jovan Melton, Rep. Joseph Salazar, and Senator Angela Williams, and 1 Republican Senator, Larry Crowder. So wait, that's... Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, they're saying 3 Democrats and 1 Republican. Similar language in the 13th Amendment, which is alternatively referred to as the Exception Clause or the Punishment Clause, has been criticized by those affiliated with movements like the National Prison Strike. Yeah, prison is so messed up in this country, dude.
Yeah, Colorado makes so much money off of their recreational cannabis revenue. You would think that some of their prisons might actually see some of that money. I know I've talked to teachers there that are like, hey, where's this money going? You know, it's not coming into the school where I work at. Where is it going?
And then another thing is, all of these states that claim to be like liberal, progressive, whatever, why aren't they fixing the prison systems? You know, you can fix your state prison.
Right.
You know, is it a money issue?
It's a greed issue.
Yeah. I mean, Colorado has all that extra money. Maybe maybe they don't have as much extra money as they did back when they first legalized, because they made, you know, like they were one of the first.
If you speak with anybody who's done time in a state facility and a federal facility, both, because a lot of times federal prisoners will be shipped around through the country and left to stay in state prisons where there are 6-9 people in one little cell. If you talk to those people, they will give you a very very good description of how messed up state prison life really is, as opposed to federal prison. It's very different. It's all regulated in-house with all made-up rules that they make up.
You have to join a gang, or you get...
I've heard some very terrifying stories about state prisons.
The Tuesday result makes Colorado one of the first states to remove the language from its constitution. Governing Magazine notes that bills with similar goals failed this year in Wisconsin and stalled in Tennessee. That's sad. But this wasn't the first time that such a proposal has appeared on Colorado ballots. In 2016, with the backing of state politicians and various local advocacy groups, a similar measure called Amendment T aimed to remove the slavery as punishment language from the state's constitution. But the amendment was rejected by the state's voters. Development experts like University of Colorado law professor Melissa Hart blamed less or overt racism and more on the confusing way the amendment was written. Well, what about convicted criminals not being allowed to vote? You know, that would have probably had... basically, everyone who wasn't ever convicted had to back up the people who were. And I guess that, you know, that's what happened.
Right.
After failing in 2016, Colorado activists mounted a new campaign to remove the slavery language. With the amendment on the ballot for the second time in 2018, advocates argued that the state had a second chance to officially abolish prison slavery. A number of groups and officials weighed in on the measure earlier this year before it was added to the ballot. Yeah, and that first one was probably like a run-up to what finally happened, you know? More people heard about it failing 2 years ago, and then they probably, you know, thought about it a lot more for 2 years and said, okay, I have to go out and vote for this. So, I mean, yeah, things fail, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the world.
Right.
We did our due diligence ahead of time, and we had legal assistance from the state legislature. From the ACLU, Emory told the Colorado Independent last month. Supporters of the measure largely focused on simplifying how the amendment was worded on ballots in an effort to avoid this highly confusing question from 2016. Shall there be an amendment to the Colorado Constitution concerning the removal of the exception to the prohibition of slavery and involuntary servitude when used as a punishment for persons duly convicted of a crime? I think I can kind of understand that, but I do see how it could be confusing. Like talking about removal of the exception to the prohibition of slavery. Like, wait, you want to remove the prohibition of slavery? What? I'm not voting for that. Yeah, I bet they got a lot of votes on both sides they didn't know what they were voting for.
Right.
But I guess now that I know what it means, it is easy to understand.
Right.
At the time, supporters of the measure argued that this question was simply too convoluted for voters, and nearly 300,000 voters skipped the question when filling out their ballots 2 years ago. Yeah. I don't think this was a pushback at all by the individuals saying they wanted slavery in the Constitution. Rep. Joe Salazar, a Democrat who sponsored the legislation to get Amendment T on the 2016 ballot, told the New York Times, "I just think the language was too confusing." In addition to Salazar, Amendment T was also sponsored by state Democrats Senator Jesse Ulibarri and Rep. Jovan Melton. In 2018, the ballot question was changed to be clearer, and much like 2 years prior, the proposal enjoyed unanimous support from Colorado state legislatures and local advocacy groups. The measure received very little public opposition, and no groups mounted an organized challenge to the amendment. You know, something I just thought of, if I was in prison in Colorado right now, like as soon as that passed, I'd be cheering, like, oh my God,
right.
We're going to get paid. I'm not a slave anymore, oh my God.
Right.
Yeah, it probably means a lot to them, you know? And it means nothing to everyone else. They're like, yeah, sure. Like,
right. I mean,
that'd be cool. And their entire life has changed now.
Right.
You know? They can leave with money. But they're probably going to start paying them $1 an hour like the other states do, right? What do you think?
I don't think it's very much more than like a dollar something.
There should be a federal law saying prisoners get at least minimum wage. But it would be nice if we got more than that. If they got paid equally, you know? I don't care if you committed a crime. If you're working and you're under guard for your crime, you're like, what's the issue?
Right.
However, Amendment A did face some criticism. In an October article in the Colorado Independent, Dan Rubenstein, a Republican district attorney representing Mesa County, argued that the amendment called unnecessary attention to a settled issue, and that removing the slavery language was redundant. He added that the amendment would effectively ban community service punishments and have the unintended consequence of increasing the number of people incarcerated or those subject to significant fines. And
if you know you can go to prison and make the same amount or potentially more money than your skill set would have made you on the outside, it seems like going to prison might be a favorable option for you.
Yeah, I know some people like prison.
If you know you're only going to make $1.80 an hour to do a bunch of labor and sweat your ass off, you're probably not going to want to go there. But if you're making $15 an hour to sweat your ass off, which may be the same amount you'd make on...
Like an indentured servitude program. Like, oh, okay, so... Or like when I went to basic training, I was in basic training, I couldn't spend my money. So it was just piling up in my bank account, which was a nice little chunk of money to get out of... it's kind of like prison, basic training.
Which brings me to the thought of perhaps these prison systems they like the way things are, where not everybody has money. The average person doesn't really have any money in there, so they can't really afford to have a better way of life in there. So it causes people to have less things, and maybe it causes less problems because they can buy less things, which they bring less product in there and stuff.
Where was I? Increasing the number of people incarcerated. That argument was swiftly challenged by local experts. This amendment has a pretty clear reading, and I don't see it causing the mischief that some are worried about. University of Colorado law professor Phil Weiser told The Independent. But, I mean, I kind of do agree that it could be a problem for community service, which is an excellent punishment. Like, the times I've gotten in trouble in my life and they gave me community service, like,
it's like, you don't want to do that again.
Well, no, but I'm saying, like, I don't want to serve, like, a month in jail. Like, I got caught underage drinking and they gave me community service. And it could have been worse.
Right.
Maybe. Well, no, it could have been a ticket, but whatever. While official opposition to the amendment has been limited, activists promoting Amendment A have been subjected to harassment. On Monday, Emory A posted a photo of a pile of burned Amendment A flyers on Facebook, saying that the flyers had been burned on his front porch. In an interview with the Colorado Sun, Emory likened the action to a cross burning in my front yard. In the run-up to the election, there was also some confusion due to the state's voting guide, also known as a Blue Book, which is given to voters shortly before they cast their ballots. The book is required to include arguments for and against each proposed amendment, and noted that voting yes to remove the language makes an important symbolic statement, adding that the 25 states who currently do not have any language about slavery in their constitutions still have prison work and community service programs. But the book also noted that the amendment can be viewed as making a change to the Colorado Constitution that is redundant, wording that might lead some people to vote no. Another thing, could you imagine if community service was paid? Like if they sentenced you to 40 hours of minimum wage work? Like if you're a criminal, that could be good.
If you're making less than that...
Well, I'm saying, like, if you're poor and you commit a crime because you want money, you need money, being...
Right.
But the only problem is how many people would not be able to find work, so they get community service on purpose. Yeah.
I think that's the problem with that.
Yeah. With the amendment passing successfully this time, advocates finally achieved the victory they fought for 2 years ago. But they acknowledge that this victory is more about the reaffirmation the state's values than immediately changing prison labor conditions. This won't have a direct impact on prison reform or how inmates are treated. Camus Allen, an organizer with Abolish Slavery Colorado, told Fox News in July, but it is definitely more impactful than removing something like a Confederate monument, because this will actually change the text of a living document. Yeah.
This is great. It really makes me think about all the people that are locked up in Colorado for cannabis-related offenses.
Still?
I don't know. I never read into whether people were released in Colorado as soon as this all passed, all the wreck.
Yeah, I don't remember that either. I know a lot of places do.
Yeah, it would seem like...
I feel like Colorado would have.
It seems like a no-brainer just to let all the cannabis people out as soon as you legalize. It would seem like that would make sense. Even
though they did commit a crime, and you could argue that they're...
were there weapons involved?
Well, no, but like they're... what's the word? Like... ignoring the law is what they should be punished for, not what the law was. You know,
right?
Just because it's legal now, these are still people who are criminals and they committed crimes. You know what I mean? So it could be argued. I don't know.
I just think it's the severity of the crime. What was involved? Was there violence? Were there weapons? Were there firearms?
For real.
That
I think
makes a big difference.
Nonviolent crimes should have fines.
Nonviolent drug offenses should be
anything nonviolent. If you're prisons should only be used for keeping violent people away from society.
Right. Rapists, murderers, people like that.
Someone who, but even manslaughter. Like if you blow a red light and kill someone, you know, you're an idiot. You know, you were very unlucky to have blown a red light at that time, but you're not a murderer. You're not a danger to society. You're stupid, but I would argue that someone who ran a red light and murdered someone is never going to do it again.
I would argue that the real people that need to be locked up are committing legal murder, and it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say? Oh, that's it for the article. If you enjoyed it, let us know by giving it a thumbs up. Let us know what you thought in the comments. And check out our Patreon link in the description if you want to help us. And thanks for watching. Goodbye.